This is the sound of a normal shotgun.
But this is a silenced shotgun. It's an over and under shotgun with a full-length silenced shroud. It is quite different on the audio scale. Let's see. That is insanely quiet. I mean, I don't know why I got ear protection in, probably because there's a load of other shooters here using standard guns that are super duper noisy. Moreover, it reduces recoil massively. Today we're going to be looking at this silenced shotgun and discussing silenced shotguns in general. Are they a worthy investment? Are they a bit of a niche thing? Are they stupid? Let's find out. So underneath, this is an invest arm over and under. They are not a nice design particularly. It's very cheap, but I think at the time that they were building these, if they started with something like a Beretta, which they actually did, it would have been a very expensive product given the conversion work that is needed to make this happen. More importantly, this is a non-ejector lever cocking gun, so it doesn't need a forend. And by lever cocking, what I mean is that if you don't push that lever all the way over, the hammers won't cock fully. So if we just fire it off, if we just open the gun and close the gun, nothing happens. So you need to make sure that top lever goes all the way till it stops going. Not too hard when you know how, but the amount of times I've seen people buy these for the first time and go, it doesn't work, and you just need to really lever cock it, not just open it. That can work quite nicely if you don't want to recock it, so you can keep the gun kind of safe, but it was a good candidate for the process because of that. However, it's hardly a luxury gun. Not that it matters, because you're not taking this out to win world championships, right? Enough talking, let's shoot a few more clays. This is a 20 bore, a 20 gauge, and we're firing 3/4 ounce 21 gram cartridges. They are supersonic at 1400 feet per second, but if you start putting subsonics in a gun like this, it really just, the only thing you hear is the fall of the hammer. They are so unbelievably quiet. Not that they're particularly noisy without. Applications of that are varied, really. And the main one is not being found. That has a lot of negative connotations, but in England, certainly southern England, where there are millions and millions of people in a very small area, often you found yourself in need of a gun where neighbours might be less than happy with 12 bores banging away all day, and a gun like this can come in handy. I do think this is about the best offering out there, interestingly. When it comes to silenced guns, you've got three main options: a single barrel, a pump action, and an over and under like this. The over and under allows itself to have a full length shroud, meaning sighting is quite easy. You line the bead up somewhere down the top of the thing, and this acts like a big round rib. The pump actions, you look over the back of the action, and because of all the slide and the work, the silencer starts halfway down the barrel and obviously protrudes. You can play a little bit, put red dot sights on, put comb razors, put rear sights so you can actually help aim them, but they can be devilishly hard to shoot if you don't shoot them often. The single barrels can be the same depending on whether they've got a forend or not. The invest arm's about the best. Again, they do a single and the over and under in invest arm because of the full length shroud, the full length silencer. I could easily get in love with one of these, but again, the realities of the practical application of something like this, they are fairly limited. But it's not just people. You got to think, shooting around livestock, certainly horses get very touchy around noise, as do cows, and this is where guns like this come into their own. I have dreams of playing suburban skeet, but I also know that you probably still need an acre of garden for that to be a reality, plus shot fallout in other people's land is not a very good thing, legally speaking. It's not the best, for sure. That lever cocker has upset me a few times, but it is something fun to shoot. One of the major issues with silenced guns, well, there's two, really. The first is handling. If we hold over the hinge, you've got a lot of weight out front, meaning they're extremely left-hand heavy. You can combat this with extra weight in the stock, but you know, you're turning into a very heavy gun all of a sudden. This means they don't shoot like top-end guns, and you have to work around that, honestly. And the second is servicing. Lots of gumph gets caught in the baffles, so you have holes drilled in your tubes and a set of baffles at the end to catch the gases. Little bits of lead, dirt fragments, all kinds of crap builds up in here, honestly, so you need to take this off and clean it. Certainly the single barrels and the pumps, the ones with the short ones, it's a lot easier to take off and clean. You're going to need to do that probably every 100 rounds. That's not ideal. Certainly if you're using a lot of oil when you're cleaning it and you're brushing that in, you can build a huge amount of sort of concrete gun dust in the front, and that's not a thing you should do. So it's best to leave them, given that these are chrome lined, and most of these guns will be chrome lined. Leave them until you service it to give them a good scrub. What was really interesting with this B-Bird, and we're going to go and see if we can capture it, or at least probably not audio-wise, because this gun is so quiet and that target is so far away, quite hard to hit with this gun. You shoot and you hear the pellets break the target. It's really cool. You even heard that. How cool is that? Often you'll shoot a target and you'll hear pellets hit at long range or even short range. If you just take a bit off the top of the disc, you can hear the hit, you can hear the break, but hearing it whilst the target smashes. See, I hit that with the first shot over the top, and again I can see dust come off the top of the dome. And we did a very interesting film last year about that, and how this is where premium cartridges come in. That harder lead would cause a break as opposed to bouncing off the top of the dome. And the second one hit it, crack. But it's the small things in life. I'm a simple man, but I could get used to hearing things break. Like, it's when I first moved to a silenced rifle, you can hear the thwack of the bullet hitting the deer. You can sort of take in so many more sensory things. There is no application to that, other than perhaps refs might be able to hear a hit, but a hit's supposed to be a break, right? And so it wouldn't change much. This gun patterns like a steam train. I find it fascinating with these things. Firstly, the handling you can get used to pretty quick. It is front heavy, but the overall weight isn't massive. So if you just, I guess, it's not fighting it, and that's good. You get a heavy gun that's not balanced well, that's not nice. This, you kind of just, you can work around it. There's still a fair amount of weight behind your left hand in the grand scheme of things. I always find it fascinating. You do lose a little bit of velocity, but at the same time, at normal ranges, I don't think that that affects things that adversely. You start stepping beyond about 30 meters, then you'll start noticing little differences in lead, little differences in impact, but you're not losing that much, just enough. The reality of everyday applications for these is that you're probably not looking for super long range. A lot of work around farmyards, that kind of thing. A lot of work in gardens, large gardens. And, you know, let's say pigeon shooting near a public footpath. It may be legal, but you're not wanting to wind people up in the modern era. Certainly not in the south of England, where everyone is a bit tetchy. You can't hate it. And again, the way that patterns it is turning things off. Maybe we should take that silencer off and actually see what the choke is, but I have done in the past, and I swear it's a choke-free zone. That is fascinating. But there you go. That was the Invest Arm. There are plenty of Invest Arms and Bakels and Mossbergs out there on the market. You can buy them new or second hand. And if you don't want to buy a gun completely as a silenced gun, ATEC make a moderator that screws onto a choke on the end of your gun. That can be pretty horrific for the handling, given that you're bolting everything at the end of your gun. But at the end of the day, if you want a silenced gun, that's the price you pay, short of getting something like this, which I think is about the best offering. It's just a little ugly. So that was silenced shotguns. They are fascinating things, and the biggest thing for me over the noise is the recoil. It almost utterly eliminates recoil. If they weren't so left-hand heavy, what a great gun for beginners to start with. And I know a few people who start their kids on the silenced 410 because actually the overall weight there isn't bad. Again, as long as you have the full weight shroud, so you're not having to negotiate sight pictures, which can be a little confusing and a little busy. One of the main issues is that it's not actually a silenced shotgun. It's a moderated or suppressed shotgun, because it only really reduces the noise volume by about 15 to 22 decibels, which is enough, but I should say from a health and safety perspective, still wear ear protection, of course. I think that could be technically borderline with like a subsonic 3-inch 410 shell, but protect your ears. Use custom fit guards. They may be great tools, but they're not without their technical difficulties. When you fire a bullet from a rifle, it is a single projectile of a set size going out the barrel end and through set baffle holes. There is one piece of metal, fairly constant, fairly simple to work with. With a shotgun, there's a lot of gaps in the pellets, there's a lot more issues to try and combat. It's a less of a constant, and so these are perhaps not as effective as rifle moderators in noise reduction total. A moderator works a little bit like a muffler on the car. What it does is it takes that gas expansion, which is a lot of the noise that we hear, and takes part of it out. So as it goes through a set of baffles, the air expands and gets caught and held back bit by bit by bit, and that really reduces the bang that comes out at the end. It's a very simplified version of how it works, but it's good enough. With a shotgun, because you can't have this super long moderator because the pellets will disperse, they actually drill and port the barrels, as we discussed. Pretty much all of the powder is burnt within the first 16 inches, so it's not like they drill within that, so you're not losing masses of velocity If you started to drill beyond that, you would start to lose velocity of the shell. You lose a little bit because of the gases escaping. It's a few feet per second in reality. Although a little bit more has been discussed on various websites and forums. Maybe we should get one over a chronograph. That would be good. Quite difficult with a shotgun, but possible. And so actually, instead of catching all the gas at the end, they're catching the gas as it comes down, and that's how you make a more effective moderator. The ones that screw onto the end of your barrel are fantastic options, and I think ShotKam make one starts at about £180, $220, which is a bargain. But you're never going to get quite the same effect as if you have a fully drilled out gun, a fully ported barrel, all this kind of thing. This is where barrel porting actually makes a difference. That's quite exciting. As previously discussed, these guns are really relevant in urban and livestock situations when you're not looking to draw attention to yourself. And from a practical perspective, I have been sat in somebody's house where they have shot 10 yards from me out in the garden, in a country place, don't get me wrong, not in suburban Southampton, and I didn't know they'd shot. I figured they didn't have any action, and that's one double glazed window will stop the sound, which is enough, right? I'd rate it on about 100 yards away is about right. You start using noisy cartridges, obviously that range is going to go, but with standard supersonic shells, 100 yards away, you can barely hear this thing go off. Obviously, still there, good ears, but we're going to forget about that. Let's not get too fussy. Maybe we should also get a proper sound reader and take a test. Not that it will give much, unless we get the perfect weather conditions. We should do that. Probably won't be that interesting. Maybe interesting to 100 people. I don't know if I'm one of them, to be honest. So they are great, and they're very practical for those applications. They do have downsides, and we've covered some of those already. The first is point of aim, and that's actually the biggest one for a lot of these things. This gun is nice. You have a very simple sighting plane, and the stock actually isn't set up too badly to look down it. When you get into things like this is the Mossberg Hush Power. You have a mid-bead set below this. First things first, take that out. That will not help you when shooting this. And secondly, you need to be putting sort of a 10 to 15mm cone raiser on the back to see over the mod at the end. It can be quite a confusing sight picture, and there is tendencies to have to learn how to shoot these, and that can be a little confusing depending on your shooting level. Don't get me wrong, it only takes a few shots to get into it, but if you're taking this out occasionally and you forget, it can get frustrating with one of these. This is where the single length, full length silencer comes into its own, to be honest. I find it much easier to shoot even though the weight is greater. And point two is that the balance of these things is suboptimal. And you can re-weight it and rebalance it, but there's a lot of weight out front with both of these guns, as we've shown. It doesn't make them unshootable, it just means that you have to shoot them in a certain way. I wouldn't say they're super pleasant, but they're not unworkable. No gun's unworkable. We get really fine-tuned down to what is perfect, but also that really relates to you being perfect too. Most of us are just average, and being just average, get over it and shoot it. It does take a lot of left arm pushing and a lot of effort sometimes, but who cares? Point three is cleaning. As you can hear, lots of stuff gets inside the barrel. That's little chips of lead, little chips of plastic, if you're shooting plastic wad, little bits of unburnt powder, little bits of carbon buildup that have been knocked off by the pressure buildup. It's a pain in the arse, frankly, but it's not impossible. You are firing a rampant pack of puppies down there and they're all jiggling around against the side of the barrel, and things will get cut off, especially when you have cheese grater-esque porting cut into the side. Especially when you're trying to catch all that gas with an imperfect pattern, because no pattern comes out the same as the tube. It will start to expand, little bits will get cut off. There will be little bits of residue. It's not a perfect thing. Like a rifle moderator is way more of a perfectly engineered thing. These things are less ideal. But it's not too hard, as discussed. You take the little stop screw out, you unscrew it, shake it out, wash it out, chuck it in a tin of diesel for a week, you'll be absolutely fine. As long as that tin of diesel is inside your gun cabinet. Which takes us nicely onto legality. In England, legally, these just need to go on a shotgun license. It's a relatively simple process. In fact, when it's built onto a gun like this, it's just written as one gun on your license. If you have a spare moderator, that can be written on separately, although I'm aware from previous dealings that that is a touch grey as areas go. It should be written on your license though, just for peace of mind. Same as spare barrels or anything like that. Makes life a lot easier if it's in one place. In America, I have discussed this with a few people. It seems that they're rated exactly the same as a rifle moderator. You need to pay your tax stamp, do your application, you can just get it. Which bears the question of, is it actually wise to have an integrally suppressed gun like this in America, whereas you could have one of these bolt-on the end things with a screw and choke that you can just screw in, change that choke out and screw on others, either the ATEC. I think the Hush Power is actually a one choke job. But the ATEC, you get different adapters and you can set it up for different guns. It's a pretty good idea. And then that would make more sense because you could suppress all of your guns. However, you are adding a big weight to a gun that you're used to shooting in a different way. What's interesting about the ATEC, as a complete aside, is that the top of the silencer, because it's a square that hangs off the bottom of the gun, it actually sits level with your rib, so your sight picture doesn't change, which is really good. My hands are all over the place today. All in all, feel they are a bit niche, they are a lot of fun, and they can really avoid having to speak to other people, which is nice. I don't mind when people come up and have a chat on a day when you're shooting just to find out what's going on. They're not all unpleasant. In fact, the vast majority of people I've encountered when out are very nice. They're just up for a chat. They appreciate why you're there, or at least understand. Needless to say, there is plenty of applications for these guns that are useful. They obviously have like that nefarious edge like any silenced gun, but honestly, from a practical perspective, having one of these or access to one of these is so useful. Not having to talk to people when you're out because they've come over to see what the banging is all about is great. Not everyone who comes over wants a fight, I've discovered. Most people are really pleasant. But if you're like me and don't particularly enjoy talking to people when you're out in the countryside, you just want a bit of peace and quiet, not to ruin anyone's day or cause any distress, given that people move to the countryside and don't appreciate guns go off, it's worth having a look at one of these, especially in the south of England. Guys, thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you next time. What do you think? Would you own a silenced shotgun? Are they just a gimmick? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day. Let us know if you want to see more. I have access to one of these. If we want to go out and shoot a silenced pump, we can see what the thing is. Maybe we could take out a load of guns and a soundometer and see what the difference is. That would be vaguely interesting. Or maybe we should just take one of these and go and shoot some pigeons. That would certainly be more fun to do.